gleaming glass towers of Apex Industries stood as both a marvel and a warning, their mirrored surfaces reflecting a city of contrasts. Within their walls, ambition thrived, but so did the quiet undercurrents of inequity, hidden behind the hum of productivity and the glow of fluorescent lights. The 42nd floor, home to the marketing department, was no exception, a realm where ideas were currency, but not all voices carried the same weight. Marcus Thompson adjusted his tie as he entered the office, his movements deliberate, his expression unreadable. The faint scent of coffee and printer ink filled the air as colleagues bustled past, their greetings polite but distant. At 35, Marcus had learned to navigate these spaces with precision, masking the simmering frustration beneath his professional demeanor. His golden 5-pin glinted on his lapel, but the recognition it symbolized felt hollow. 5 years of dedication, yet every step forward had been met with invisible barriers. Across the floor, Richard Blackwell observed the scene from his office, his hawk-like gaze piercing through the frosted glass. The vice president of marketing exuded authority, his tailored suit and graying temples lending him an air of gravitas. But beneath the polished exterior lay a man fiercely protective of the status quo. He tapped a pen against his desk, the rhythm betraying his impatience. Today would be decisive, a calculated move to eliminate what he saw as a growing threat. Meanwhile, Samantha Chen sat in her HR office, her brow furrowed as she reviewed Marcus's personnel file. The numbers didn't add up, the patterns too glaring to ignore. Her instincts told her this wasn't a simple case of underperformance. The tension in her chest grew as she glanced at the clock, knowing she was running out of time to act. As the office buzzed with activity, Marcus's phone lit up with a message from Zoe Ramirez. Her words were brief but telling, "Be ready." Marcus's lips tightened into a thin line as he pocketed his phone. The USB drive in his pocket felt heavier now, its contents a silent promise. The game had begun, and Marcus was ready to make his move. The story unfolds in the sprawling, sun-scorched expanse of Aridion, a world where vast deserts stretch endlessly, punctuated by colossal, ancient ruins that whisper secrets of a forgotten civilization. Towering spires of glass like obsidian cast long shadows over nomadic camps, and shimmering mirages dance on the horizon. The air is heavy with the scent of scorched earth and the faint hum of mysterious energy that lingers beneath the surface. Aridion is a land of extremes, where survival depends on cunning, resilience, and the ability to navigate its treacherous terrain. At the heart of the story is Kale, a resourceful scavenger in his late 20s with a knack for unearthing relics of the past. His wiry frame and piercing green eyes reflect a life of hardship, yet his quick wit and unyielding determination make him a force to be reckoned with. Haunted by fragmented memories of his childhood, Kale is driven by an insatiable desire to uncover the truth about his parents' disappearance, which he believes is tied to the ancient ruins. Accompanying Kale is Lyra, a fiercely independent cartographer with a prosthetic arm crafted from the same obsidian found in the ruins. Her maps are sought after by traders and adventurers alike, but her true motivation lies in charting the uncharted, unlocking the mysteries of Aridion. Lyra's pragmatic nature often clashes with Kale's impulsive tendencies, yet their shared goal for answers binds them together in an uneasy alliance. The antagonist is Dren, a charismatic yet ruthless leader of the Iron Talon Syndicate, a group that exploits Iridion's resources for profit. Dren's silver tongue masks his brutal methods, and his pursuit of a powerful artifact threatens to disrupt the fragile balance of the world. Kale and Lyra must navigate shifting alliances, uncover buried truths, and confront their own inner demons as they race to stop Dren before it's too late. As the clock struck 2 p.m., Marcus entered the boardroom, his calm demeanor masking the storm within. Blackwell's rehearsed accusations barely began when Marcus slid the USB onto the table, locking eyes with Samantha, who subtly nodded. "Before you proceed," Marcus said evenly, "let's review the evidence." The room froze, the balance of power shifting as secrets teetered on the edge of revelation. The small coastal town of Havenridge was known for its serene beaches and tightly knit community, but beneath its tranquil surface, secrets simmered. Maya, a fiercely independent marine biologist, had returned to her hometown with a bold goal: to uncover why the local coral reefs were mysteriously dying. Her return was met with skepticism by her childhood friend-turned-rival, Ethan, a fisherman whose livelihood depended on the same waters she sought to protect. Their clashing priorities quickly set the stage for tension, though an unspoken history between them lingered. Maya's first obstacle came in the form of a lack of funding. The town council, led by the pragmatic yet wary Mayor Lila, dismissed her concerns as overblown, prioritizing tourism over environmental intervention. Determined, Maya turned to her estranged father, an inventor with a troubled past, hoping he could help her build equipment to study the reefs. Their strained relationship added another layer of complexity, as years of unresolved conflict threatened to derail their collaboration. Meanwhile, Ethan faced his own challenges. A mysterious drop in fish populations was forcing him to venture further into dangerous waters. His crew, including his loyal but impulsive younger brother, Sam, grew restless as risks mounted. Ethan's growing frustration with Maya's interference clashed with his deep-seated guilt over the events that had driven them apart years ago. Their confrontations were charged with both anger and an undeniable undercurrent of unresolved feelings. As Maya began her research, she discovered a possible connection between the dying reefs and a shadowy corporation dumping chemicals offshore. Enlisting the help of her adventurous best friend, Lena, she devised a plan to gather evidence. However, her investigation put her at odds with Ethan, who feared her actions could provoke the corporation and endanger the town. This escalating conflict forced them to confront not only their shared history but also their differing visions for Havenridge's future, setting the stage for alliances, betrayals, and unexpected revelations. The morning began like any other in the quiet town of Willowridge. The sun cast a golden glow over the cobblestone streets, and shopkeepers opened their doors to the usual hum of routine. For Clara, a young botanist with a penchant for solitude, the day promised nothing more than tending to her greenhouse. She had just begun cataloging a batch of rare seeds when an urgent knock shattered the calm. Standing at her door was a disheveled courier clutching a weathered envelope, his face pale with unease. Without a word, he thrust the letter into her hands and disappeared down the street. Inside the envelope was a map marked with cryptic symbols and a hastily scrawled note: "They're coming. You must find it before they do." Clara's heart raced as she scanned the unfamiliar handwriting. She had no idea who sent the message or what it referred to, but the urgency was unmistakable. Before she could make sense of it, the distant sound of heavy boots echoed down the street. Peering through the window, she saw a group of armed strangers moving methodically from house to house, their dark uniforms and grim expressions sending a chill through her. The strangers' presence disrupted the town's peaceful rhythm, and Clara realized they were searching for something, or someone. Fear clashed with curiosity, but the map in her hands felt like a key to understanding the chaos. Her greenhouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. She knew she couldn't stay. Driven by equal parts fear and determination, Clara stuffed the map into her satchel and slipped out the back door, her mind racing with questions. Who sent the warning? What were the strangers after? And why was she, of all people, suddenly thrust into the middle of it? With no clear answers, she stepped into the unknown, her quiet life irreversibly upended. The clock ticked steadily, its rhythmic cadence a stark contrast to the chaos brewing beneath the surface. In the dimly lit server room on the 15th floor, a figure moved with practiced precision. Elena Vasquez, 31, a systems analyst with a knack for uncovering buried secrets, adjusted her glasses and scanned the lines of code scrolling across her monitor. She wasn't supposed to be there, not officially. But an anonymous tip about irregularities in Apex Industries' employee performance database had piqued her curiosity. What she found was disturbing: flagged files, altered reviews, and a pattern that painted a damning picture of systemic bias. One name kept appearing: Marcus Thompson. Upstairs, Zoe Ramirez tapped her pen against her notebook, her gaze darting between her monitor and the office door. She wasn't just a junior copywriter, she was also an aspiring journalist, moonlighting as a freelance investigator for an underground blog that exposed corporate corruption. Her instincts told her today was pivotal, and she'd been quietly gathering her own evidence. She glanced at Marcus's cubicle, wondering if he'd guessed her dual purpose yet. Zoe's phone buzzed with a message from her contact in IT: "Found something big. Meet me after 5. Meanwhile, in the sleek confines of the executive suite, another subplot unfolded. Victoria Kane, 50, Apex's chief legal officer, paced her office, a confidential memo clenched in her hand. The memo detailed a whistleblower's allegations against Blackwell, implicating him in a string of unethical practices. Victoria had built her career on navigating corporate minefields, but this was different. If the allegations were true, they could expose the company to lawsuits and irreparable reputational damage. She glanced at her watch. The 2 p.m. meeting loomed, and she needed to decide where her loyalties lay. Back in HR, Samantha Chen's investigation into Marcus's file uncovered an anomaly. His performance reviews didn't align with his documented achievements. A quick cross-check revealed discrepancies in other employees' records as well. Samantha's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about Marcus, it was systemic. She picked up her phone and dialed Elena Vasquez, an old college friend. "I need your help," she said. "Something's not adding up." As the office buzzed with routine activity, the undercurrents of rebellion, secrecy, and ambition swirled. Marcus, calm but resolute, prepared for the meeting, unaware of the alliances forming in the shadows. The clock struck noon, and Marcus found himself in the cafeteria, seated across from Zoe. Her usual bright demeanor was dimmed by concern as she leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what Blackwell's planning, but it's not good." HR looked uneasy when they left his office earlier. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. He appreciated Zoe's loyalty, but he couldn't afford to reveal too much. Not yet. His hand brushed against the USB drive in his pocket, a silent reminder of the storm he was about to unleash. Meanwhile, Samantha Chen sat in her office, poring over Marcus's personnel file. The discrepancies were glaring. Stellar performance reviews from his first 3 years, followed by sudden, inexplicable declines. Projects he spearheaded credited to others. Her gut told her this wasn't incompetence, it was sabotage. She picked up her phone, hesitating before dialing. "Legal," she murmured when the line connected. "I need clarification on whistleblower protections." Back on the 42nd floor, Blackwell was pacing his office, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. His assistant had just informed him of a rumor circulating about Marcus compiling evidence. Blackwell smirked, dismissing the idea. "Let him try," he muttered under his breath. To him, Marcus was just another ambitious upstart who didn't know his place. But as he sat back down, a flicker of doubt crept in. He opened his laptop, pulling up Marcus's recent projects. The man's work was undeniably excellent, a problem that needed to be erased before it became a threat. At his desk, Marcus opened an encrypted folder on his computer, scanning through the files one last time. Emails, meeting recordings, performance review discrepancies, it was all there. But it wasn't just about him anymore. He'd uncovered patterns suggesting systemic discrimination, a rot that extended far beyond his own experiences. His jaw tightened. This wasn't just about saving his job. It was about dismantling a culture that thrived on silencing people like him. As 2 p.m. loomed closer, the office seemed to hold its breath. Zoe sent Marcus one final message: "Be careful." Samantha stood outside the conference room, her resolve hardening. And Marcus, calm and collected, walked toward the meeting, knowing that the truth was his greatest weapon. The clock struck 1:45 p.m., and Marcus rose from his desk, the weight of the USB drive in his pocket grounding him. His mind was sharp, his resolve unshakable. He glanced at Zoe, who gave him a subtle nod from across the room. She had quietly slipped him a folder during lunch, a compilation of internal emails she'd intercepted, further corroborating his case. Marcus had thanked her with a quiet smile, knowing her loyalty came with its own risks. In Blackwell's office, the VP adjusted the photograph on his desk, his fingers lingering on the frame. For a brief moment, his polished facade cracked, revealing the man who had once struggled to build a business from nothing. But that man was long gone, replaced by someone who had learned to wield power with precision. He rehearsed his lines again, determined to frame Marcus's dismissal as a performance issue, a necessary decision for the department's growth. Samantha Chen, however, was not so easily convinced. She had spent her lunch hour digging through Marcus's records, cross-referencing performance reviews with project outcomes. The discrepancies were glaring. Marcus's contributions had consistently exceeded expectations, yet his evaluations told a different story. Samantha's jaw tightened as she printed out the evidence, her conscience refusing to let her turn a blind eye. She would attend the meeting, but she wouldn't stay silent. By 1:58 p.m., the conference room was set. Blackwell sat at the head of the table, his posture commanding. Samantha entered next, her expression unreadable, a manila folder tucked under her arm. Marcus arrived last, his stride confident, his gaze unwavering. As he took his seat, he placed the USB drive on the table, its polished surface gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The room fell silent as Blackwell cleared his throat. "Marcus, we need to discuss your future at Apex." But before he could continue, Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "I think we should discuss Apex's future first." He slid the USB drive across the table, locking eyes with his superior. Samantha's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. The battle lines were drawn. The clock struck noon, and the tension in the office had thickened to the point of suffocation. Marcus sat across from Zoe in the cafeteria, their voices low as they discussed the situation. "I don't like this," Zoe said, her fingers nervously fidgeting with a coffee stirrer. "Blackwell's been on edge all week, and HR doesn't just get involved for nothing." Marcus gave her a reassuring nod, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating his next move. "They think they've got me cornered," he replied, his tone calm but resolute. "But they don't know what I've got." Meanwhile, Samantha Chin was in her office, her unease growing by the minute. She had spent the better part of the morning reviewing Marcus's personnel file and cross-referencing it with performance reviews. Something didn't add up. His work was exemplary, his contributions undeniable. Yet, the reviews painted a different picture: vague criticisms, inconsistent ratings, and a pattern that couldn't be ignored. Samantha's gut told her there was more to this than Blackwell was letting on, and she wasn't about to rubber stamp a termination without answers. Back on the 42nd floor, Blackwell was in a private meeting with two senior executives. "We need to handle this delicately," one of them cautioned, their voice low but firm. "If this goes sideways, the fallout could be catastrophic." Blackwell waved off the concern, his confidence unshaken. "Marcus is a liability we can't afford. HR will back us up, and if he tries anything, we'll bury him in legal red tape." But as the meeting ended, a flicker of doubt crossed Blackwell's face. Deep down, he knew Marcus wasn't the type to go down quietly. At 1:45 p.m., Marcus returned to his desk, his resolve steeled. He opened an email draft, attaching a single file from the USB drive. The recipient, Samantha Chin. The subject line, "For your eyes only." He hit send and leaned back, watching the seconds tick by. Across the office, Samantha's computer pinged with the new message. She opened it, her eyes widening as she scanned the contents. By 2 p.m., the players were in position. Blackwell sat at the head of the conference table, Samantha to his left, and Marcus directly across. The air was electric, each person acutely aware that the next hour could determine their future. Blackwell began to speak, but Marcus raised a hand, cutting him off. "Before you say anything, I think you should see this," Marcus said, sliding a printed document across the table. Samantha leaned forward, her expression unreadable as she glanced at the pages. Blackwell's confident facade faltered, his jaw tightening as he realized the tide was beginning to turn. The clock's steady march toward 2 p.m. weighed heavily on Marcus, though his outward demeanor remained calm. Inside, his thoughts churned. The USB drive in his pocket felt heavier with each passing minute, not because of its physical weight, but because of the truths it carried. He glanced at the office around him, the faces of colleagues who had either ignored or enabled the injustices he'd endured. Yet, amidst the indifference, there was Zoe, who gave him a subtle nod as she passed his desk, a quiet reminder that he wasn't entirely alone in this fight. In her office, Samantha Chin closed Marcus's file and leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. The patterns in his performance reviews didn't add up. Stellar numbers followed by vague criticisms, promotions blocked without explanation. It painted a picture she couldn't ignore. Her gut told her there was more to this than Blackwell's claims of poor team dynamics. She picked up her phone and made a call, her voice firm. "I need to see the original reports from last quarter. Now." Meanwhile, Blackwell paced his office, the faint hum of the bustling floor outside muffled by the frosted glass. His fingers drummed against the desk as he rehearsed his justification for Marcus's dismissal. To him, this wasn't just about one employee, it was about control. Marcus had become a thorn in his side, questioning decisions, challenging norms. Blackwell's gaze drifted to the old photograph of his father's store. "Sometimes," he muttered to himself, "you have to protect what you've built." As the minutes ticked down, Marcus met Zoe for lunch in the park across from the building. She handed him a coffee, her voice low. "I overheard HR. They're digging into your records." Blackwell's nervous. Marcus smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried more resolve than joy. Good. Let them dig. It's time the truth came out. Back in Apex, Samantha received the report she'd requested. Her eyes widened as discrepancies leapt off the pages. Someone had altered Marcus's evaluations. She stood abruptly, determination hardening her features. If Blackwell thought she'd rubber stamp his decisions, he was about to be sorely mistaken. As 2 p.m. approached, Marcus made his way to the conference room. His heart pounded, but his steps were steady. He wasn't just walking into a meeting, he was walking into a reckoning. The conference room on the 42nd floor was bathed in an artificial glow, the blinds drawn to block out the midday sun. Marcus entered with measured steps, his gaze steady as he took in the faces around the table. Blackwell sat at the head, his expression a mask of authority, flanked by Samantha Chen and 2 HR representatives. The tension was palpable, but Marcus's calm demeanor unsettled even the most confident in the room. Blackwell cleared his throat, launching into a rehearsed monologue about performance concerns and team cohesion. His words were polished, but Marcus caught the faint tremor in his voice. When Blackwell paused, expecting compliance, Marcus leaned forward and placed the USB drive on the table. Before we proceed, I think it's only fair to review some information I've gathered over the past year, he said, his voice steady but firm. Samantha's eyes widened as Marcus handed her a printed summary of the data on the drive, emails, performance reviews, and recordings that painted an undeniable picture of systemic bias. The room fell into stunned silence as Samantha scanned the documents, her jaw tightening. This is serious, she said, finally breaking the quiet. Blackwell's composed facade cracked, his face flushing as he stammered out denials, but the evidence spoke louder than his words. Samantha stood, her voice firm as she addressed the HR team. We need a full investigation. Effective immediately, Mr. Blackwell is suspended. As Blackwell was escorted out, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Later, Zoe found him by the windows overlooking the city. You really did it, she said, her voice filled with admiration. Marcus smiled faintly. It's not just for me. It's for everyone who comes after. Weeks later, Apex Industries announced sweeping reforms, spurred by Marcus's courage. Change, long overdue, had finally arrived, and Marcus walked forward with renewed purpose, ready to build a better future. The meeting room was silent, the tension palpable as Marcus slid the USB drive across the table toward Samantha Chen. Her eyes widened as she connected the dots, quickly plugging it into her laptop. The evidence was irrefutable: emails, performance reviews, and audio recordings that painted a damning picture of systemic bias and deliberate sabotage. Blackwell's face turned pale, his carefully rehearsed justification unraveling before he could utter a word. The power dynamic in the room shifted, and for the first time, Marcus felt the weight of his silence lift. Samantha, visibly shaken, closed her laptop and turned to Blackwell. This isn't just about Marcus, she said, her voice steady. This is about a culture we've allowed to fester. I'll be recommending an internal investigation to the board. Blackwell stammered, his polished demeanor cracking, but Samantha's resolve was unyielding. Marcus, calm but resolute, added, this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and ensuring no one else has to endure this. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift. Blackwell was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation, and whispers of his potential resignation rippled through the office. Samantha spearheaded a task force to address workplace inequities, vowing to rebuild trust and transparency. Zoe, emboldened by Marcus's courage, joined the initiative, determined to be part of the change. Apex Industries, once a gleaming monolith of unchecked ambition, began to confront its flaws. For Marcus, the victory was bittersweet. He knew the fight for equality didn't end here, but he also knew he had taken a critical step forward. As he packed his briefcase one evening, his sister Aisha called, her excitement about a new scholarship opportunity lighting up his phone. Marcus smiled, feeling the weight of his decisions ripple outward. The story of Marcus Thompson is a reminder: silence perpetuates injustice, but truth, when wielded with courage, can dismantle even the tallest towers. Let this be a call to action for workplaces everywhere. Examine your culture, listen to your people, and commit to change. The future depends on it.